Good afternoon, everyone. This is Mike O'Malley here with the off-season hurricane outlook and discussion for December 9th, 2020, recorded around 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Taking a wide look across the tropical Atlantic this afternoon, not much is really going on. We have a very powerful cold front that has brought a lot of cool air down all the way into Florida, with temperatures last night getting down into the mid 30s across most of central Florida, and even upper 20s reported across portions of northern Florida. And this has brought also with it some pretty heavy snowfall across portions of the northeastern United States. Now, finally, that area is beginning to dry out a little bit, although, except for the northeastern United States, there is kind of a clipper system that is moving through, and this is bringing some snow showers to that region, which could produce a couple of inches of snowfall, maybe upwards of 4 inches in isolated spots. And then we're also seeing mostly dry conditions out across this part of the woods right here across the central United States. Very powerful cold front. You'll actually notice that there is some convection down here in the tropics. Nothing to worry about, obviously. Mainly, a lot of this is upper air divergence causing convergence at the surface, so air kind of rising. But you have a lot of upper level wind shear across this region, so not really anything going to happen this time of the year. Now, as for the sea surface temperature anomalies, last updated as of yesterday, there's a couple of ongoing things that we should kind of talk about here in regards to this. And first and foremost, you'll notice that we are still in a very prevalent La Nina look. This is still a very potent La Nina look, although it's a little bit less than it was the last several weeks. But this is very prevalent and it is still well in existence across this area. Now, what that typically means is a fairly dry and warm South United States for the winter, and a rather wet kind of area across the Great Lakes and Ohio Valley region. So this is going to promote, again, maybe an increased risk of wildfires across South Florida this year and across the deep South. Wildfires, drought conditions, possibly. This is nothing necessarily out of the unusual. We've seen big time droughts in Florida before, big time wildfires in Florida before. In 2017, I think it was either 16 or 17, there was a big wildfire closer to Walt Disney World. So there's definitely been wildfires across Florida. And that does show a risk this time of really going into February, March, and April, where we could see typically those drier months could see the increased risk of a wildfire season. And elsewhere across the tropical Atlantic, again, still well above normal across most of the entire Atlantic basin. We'll have to see how much this really holds on. So far, again, it's only December 9th, so, we still have about 6 more months until, the 2021 hurricane season begins. But every day the clock is ticking down towards the 2021 Atlantic hurricane season, and this is something that we're going to have to watch going forward, because if this remains relatively active, with, again, this being very warm, and we still have kind of a La Nina or at least a cool neutral phase, we might be gearing up for yet another busy hurricane season if everything else aligns, coming in the coming months. But so far, right now, again, it's only December 9th, so we still have a while to kind of look at these things. But early indications are that, this La Nina is going to be staying around for a while. Again, the oceanic conditions take a while for it to change, because it's not like the surface temperature on land. There's a high, basically water. It takes a lot more time to heat and cool its viscosity or something. I believe that's what it's called. The water viscosity. It takes a while, viscosity. So it takes a while for this to warm and cool. So you're going to see this kind of very slowly shift in the next couple of months. Now, one thing that we can really look at here is this is the 850 millibar zonal wind anomalies. And we're looking here at the GFS forecast. Again, this is today, December 9th. If you go further up on the scale here, you go further up, this is basically where we've been. So this is the 4th of December going all the way up back into the 14th of November. And again, this is mainly out here. You can see 120 east all the way to 180 and 120 west. So this is kind of near the Western Pacific, and then this is the Caribbean, and then the Atlantic basin all the way over to Africa, and this goes all the way over to the Western Pacific. Now, what we can see is that if we actually kind of back this out a little bit, we can actually see that we've been in a rather prevalent easterly wind event across the entire Eastern Pacific Basin, really over the Nino 3.4 region, which is over here. And this area has received a very strong western or easterly wind event, and this has caused a lot of downwelling, or I'm sorry, upwelling rather, and has promoted cooler than normal sea surface temperatures out here. Now, if we go back and look at the actual forecast, you'll notice that this is expected to continue, maybe just a little bit of a drop off, but all the way out to like the 14th of December and probably beyond, maybe even out, closing the month, we will likely see that we pick up these fairly strong wind anomalies that cause a lot of upwelling. And this is only going to help basically to cool these sea surface temperatures really in this area, the anomalies out here. And these anomalies, are getting down, closer as an average, closer to about 1 to 1.5, even potentially 2 degrees Celsius below the long term average. So this is very important because again, the long-term phases of this is going to have an impact towards next hurricane season, which, like I said, believe it or not, it's about a little less than 6 months at this point away, to until June 1st of 2021. So it's very important to kind of understand how this is changing along. But in the meantime, not really much is changing here. Again, we'll kind of revisit this at some points, but so far, we're pretty much locked in a La Nina phase at the moment. And, that might slowly change to kind of a cool neutral by the time we get into March and April. And we'll take a look at that more in depth here in just a tad bit. Now, looking here at the lower 48 weather, we can see that this is the GFS forecast, the 12Z run, valid as of 1 p.m. this afternoon. Not much is really going on across the entire CONUS here, but you do see these snow showers out here. Now, the further south you get from the axis here, the axis is actually way back up here in the Canadian prairies. You're going to get into less moisture. There's not a lot of moisture in this region, and actually, if you go down to like somewhere near like northern New Jersey, you'll notice that here you can see a fairly big temperature dew point spread. Now that does increase fairly sharply out here at about roughly about 850 or about really 750 kilometers or 750 millibars, then all the way up here, and then it kind of drops back off again. So this would promote maybe some transient snow down here, but likely we're not going to see a lot of this reaching the ground. And the surface temperatures right now are roughly about 41 Fahrenheit according to this. Which would mean that we're probably not going to get a lot of accumulating snow out here, especially in northern New Jersey. Now, across New York, in Vermont, you could definitely see some snow showers down there, causing maybe 2 to 4 inches out across that area. Now, as we move forward in time, you'll start to notice that that Clipper system continues to move off. It actually generates into a powerful extratropical low out here in the North Atlantic and the high seas out there. We're watching this secondary system, and this is going to be a system that develops into an area of low pressure, towards like midweek, and then this is going to skirt northeastward fairly rapidly. So you'll see in fairly quick succession how this area of low pressure begins to develop out across the high plains here. Now, at this moment, you would have likely this trailing frontal boundary that's somewhere in this general vicinity. And, in front of it, you have a fairly warm, moist sector, and you can see these isobars here, lines of equal pressure, and how they bend out across this area. So these are kind of also following the streamlines. So you just kind of follow these isobars, and that's basically pulling flow out of the long-term return fetch, basically from the Caribbean all the way into the Gulf of Mexico, then all the way northward. So what you're actually going to be looking for is your dew points, which are 2 meter dew points. You can actually see will be somewhat there, especially across like South Texas. You could see dew points in the low 60s. Now, severe weather, not really thinking that right now, not really looking at a big severe weather threat. You can see that there definitely could be at least maybe some marginal conditions out in front of it with a moisture return fetch pattern. Now, if we take in a kind of a sounding view here, we can see that there is pretty good temperature and dew point here of fairly significant curved hodograph in this region, but the instability is going to be lacking quite substantially, so you're not going to get a lot of deep thunderstorm activity. But you can actually see on the back side of this that we could be looking at a fairly potent event, and maybe this could potentially go into snow. If we actually look at the precipitation type here, you can actually see that this could be a fairly significant snow event on the back side of this to the north. And again, if we kind of take a sounding in rather, closer down to near Detroit, Michigan, we can see that, yeah, definitely about 36 Fahrenheit. So we're getting close there to the freezing line. But the temperature does warm with height, meaning that this would be likely rain and then quickly falling and transitioning back into a freezing rain and snow event further, the further and higher up you go. So the big takeaway from this is that we definitely could see the potential here for a big time snow event out across portions of Illinois and Michigan and maybe even Wisconsin towards Sunday. This is Saturday night going into Sunday. Fairly potent system coming out here into view across the Pacific Northwest. Again, maybe the potential for a few isolated severe storms really out across the open warm sector. But the biggest problem here is that this low pressure is well far towards the north, so the dynamics are not going to be in place the further south you go. But big time snow event could definitely occur. Storm Prediction Center not really going with much in the day 4 to 8 outlook. Really not going with much. All predictability too low. So that does remain relatively well. Again, big time snow event possible up across this region, but severe weather may be a slight chance for severe weather out here in the open warm sector. But other than that, not really looking like much of a potential at the moment. Now that concludes the video today. Hope you guys did enjoy. Again, if you found this information useful, make sure to subscribe, like, comment, etc. And of course, go follow my Twitter at MikeRemaley1. That's REMALEY for the last name, MikeRemaley1 on Twitter. And of course, links will be down in the description down below for my Patreon account if you guys want to go support that. With that being said, hope you all have a great rest of your afternoon and evening. Of course, I am Mike Remaley. I'll talk to you guys again some more tomorrow.